Hi, this is Charles Hoskinson broadcasting live from warm, sunny Colorado. Always warm, always sunny, sometimes Colorado. Today is July 21st, 2025. Making a quick video about something that just makes me sad. And it shouldn't bother me as much as it does, but it just shows you that sometimes people, they can't get out of their own way. And I just wanted to share this real quickly. So I saw this today. It was posted on Twitter, and it says, "This is Cardano Whale's generic rational under all of his votes. He no longer supports IOG because, quote, the founding entity has not delivered much for years and is requesting obscene amounts of funds to keep the same show of non-delivery going." I mean, Voltaire got delivered. A year ago, we had Genesis keys. Today, we have a constitution. We have a full on-chain government. The very fact he can even do that is an example of delivery. Laos is doing well. Hydra delivered Hydra Doom. Hydra is also getting to a point of maturity where Midnight is able to do a 37 million person airdrop using Hydra technology. Markets are doing quite well. Bitcoin DeFi is growing at an extraordinary pace. There's no diversity that's happening now. And obviously, there's a ton of innovations down the pipeline, from the cryptographic innovations that Midnight brings to bear to innovations like Mithril and Big Plutus upgrades, amongst other things. Does he really believe that we haven't delivered anything and we haven't done anything? Didn't mention it for years and years. Was actually quite a supporter until he got called out over Twitter for saying something absurd. What was the thing? The thing was, hey, if we sell $100 million worth of ADA and convert it to stablecoins in Bitcoin, it will collapse the price of ADA. Okay. I mean, go to Cardano. Today's volume is $2.5 billion worth of trading, and that's just on the public markets. And that's an aggregator. OTC transactions, there's tons of people floating around who want to buy ADA at the scale of $10 million, $15 million, $25 million packages. With the current trading going on, it'd be less than 15 minutes to sell $100 million worth of ADA. It wouldn't move the goddamn market one bit. So we have a Twitter dispute about it. He has a position, I have a position. Mine is informed by history and facts and being in the space for 15 years and having these relationships. He's entitled to his own opinion, which he used ChatGPT to justify. Okay. So we agree to disagree. He moves on. And then he goes and says, if you support him as a DREP, he's now going to auto vote no on every IOG proposal and say our entire firm has delivered nothing. Every single IOG employee delivers nothing. And we have a bloated budget, apparently. As compared to what? What's going on in Solana or Ethereum or SWI or Aptos, which is all considerably more expensive. They spend sometimes over $1 billion a year. And compared to what is the delivery? A network that's been running for 8 years straight, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's ego. It's emotion. It's, I got called out and I'm angry and I'm lashing out. And it doesn't help the ecosystem. Governance is what you make of it. And there's a two-way relationship here. There's the DREP and the delegator, and it's a regulating function. So when you see that DREPs are doing things that aren't in the best interest of the ecosystem as a whole, but rather out of ego and emotion, as a delegator, what you do is you remind them that you can recall your stake. And it forces them back into a position of behaving rationally. And they have to really ask, do I still want to be a DREP? Or if I do, what am I prepared to concede with that? Governance requires consent of the governed. And we're still trying to learn this and figure all this stuff out. I've had so many people come and just say, just apologize to Whale. I will never apologize if I'm in a debate and I take a position and people get offended by the position I take. It is factually true that if you divest $100 million worth of ADA the right way, you could do it both quickly and not disrupt the market. That's my position based upon knowledge, experience, and relationships and talking to OTC desks on a pretty regular basis. If somebody disagrees with that, they have every right to disagree with that. But what they don't have the right to do is then take their ball, go home, and say, for the rest of time now, participating in governance, anytime you come to ask us to do something, I'm going to automatically vote no against it and say that your company delivers nothing. Because you got angry because you had a Twitter fight. Now you're going to run away from Twitter. And they said, well, but he produces all this value. Why don't we look at the comments? They've been very caustic. They've attacked other ecosystems. They've created a lot of drama. We have to make some decisions as we go into Rare Evo and we look at governance and we think about, okay, how do we as an ecosystem want to be perceived externally? And what is the lived experience of people who want to participate in governance and people want to hold people accountable for governance? A blanket no vote on every single thing that my company proposes because you're angry over a Twitter fight is not good governance, just straight up. And you have to make a decision. If you agree with that, show that by pulling delegation. Then moving forward, DREPs will realize that they have to set ego aside and then look at things on a case by case basis and say, well, there's 39 things being proposed. So maybe I like A, but I don't like B. And I think C is right price, but I don't have transparency on D. There you go. But to say, well, this company hasn't delivered anything and is just perpetuating their nonsense, what you've done is you've stepped into general statements. And I've never made general statements about whale. I don't particularly care. There's some takes I thought were great. There's some takes that I didn't think were so great. When those takes came into the Cardano sovereign wealth fund concept, which, by the way, everybody in the ecosystem for more than 4 years has been begging for, this idea of stablecoin liquidity, getting stable coins on Cardano. How many people are running around saying, when circle, 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 we need circle, we need circle, we need USDC, we need USDC. We can't have our DeFi ecosystem without it. We can't have our DeFi ecosystem without it. Literally, probably a million fucking tweets over the last 4 years. So then a proposal comes on the table and says, here's how we solve it. And then he shows up and says, well, that would destroy the price of ADA. The mere talking about it, which, by the way, we're up 50% since we started talking about it, but the mere talking about it will destroy ADA. We can't possibly entertain the idea of a divestment of $100 million worth of ADA, even though there's billions of dollars worth of the asset traded on a daily basis. Instead of saying, well, here's a small scale experiment, and if it goes well, let's go do that. It was, this can't happen. And anybody who disagrees with me is wrong. And then the minute that I disagree, plays the victim, runs away, withdraws from Twitter, says I'm a horrible person, tries to rally popular support, and now as a DREP is lashing out and voting against all of our proposals. It's less about whale. It's more about conduct. We're going to have a governance workshop at Rare Evo. What you get is what you want. Constitution is going to be updated. There's questions about the 2026 budget process. There's questions about how we work with DREPs and constitutional committee members. As you know, the elections are coming soon for the replacement of the constitutional committee members, meaning that we will no longer be an interim member. It means IO has no governance role whatsoever. And actually, the majority of the Intersect board will be community elected by the end of the year. That's my understanding from Jack's latest communication, which means that it's a total reset on how we do things in this ecosystem. And we have to make decisions about what we tolerate and what we don't tolerate, and what we want our DREPs to do and what we don't want them to do. If you want them to be dramatic and flashy and broad superlatives, lash out at people that they don't like and use ego and emotion in the way that they vote, that's what you'll get. If you pull stake from people who do that and give it stake to people who are rational and well balanced and take things on a case by case basis, that's what you get. I'm staying out of it. I have a lot of ADA, but I haven't delegated it to myself or to anyone. And I've allowed the network to just kind of choose its own destiny without my influence. But I do have an advisory capacity. And part of that is saying to everybody listening, what you see is what you get. And everything requires participation. The people who show up at the governance meetups at Rare Evo are probably going to have a pretty big say on proposals that get pushed through to update the Constitution. Pretty simple. They showed up. They did the work. They talked to people. The people who don't show up will have less of a say. It's participatory, merit-based government. And then when we talk about these things, we always have to have an eye on what problem are we trying to solve? I would argue that we have to win the narrative fight. What is Cardano going to be about over the next 5 years? And it can't be the Ethereum killer. That was last cycle's narrative. We need a better narrative as an ecosystem. And we have some with Midnight and Bitcoin DeFi as examples. We can take that road if we want to, or we can take a different road, but we have to decide that. And then we have to define upfront the KPIs to hold the ecosystem as a whole accountable. Because right now, the external people are looking at TVL and they're looking at transaction volume and they're looking at DApp engagement and all these other things. And we're not looking so good when they measure those things. We can say they're all poopy faces and they're bad people, but you know what? If the VCs read that and the investors read that and all the big deciders floating around read that and they think that that's a credible metric set, we've already lost the game. So either we have to win those metrics or choose different metrics and convince people that those are just as meaningful, if not more so. And you have to have a strategy behind that. These are the conversations that matter. And my role is still to help try to facilitate and push those together. As we saw today with Whale's Votes, it basically said that we produced nothing, contributed nothing. Our bloated bureaucracy basically didn't do any of this. I guess all these conversations, the hundreds of workshops, just magically materialized and self-organized. Again, it's ego. So your leadership has to decide that. And you get what you want. If you get the right leaders in the room, you give them the right authority, and you hold them accountable in the right way, I have a belief that Cardano will be bigger than Ethereum. If you don't have the right leaders in the room, Cardano will die. It's just true. Decentralization doesn't mean there's no leadership. Decentralization means you can pick them and you can fire them and you can change direction as a network as a whole, and no one person has carte blanche to decide these types of things. That's what decentralization ought to mean. If it means total chaos and we can never coordinate and every single thing is direct democracy, guess what? We've already died, because you can't outcompete protocols that are able to coordinate more quickly, because they have to adopt technology too. And we have to get a lot of stuff done. And there's a ton of things that have made me deeply uncomfortable over the last year with the governance process, but I've held my tongue on a lot of them because they're not productive. And I've tried very hard to have those conversations in closed rooms with the particular people and negotiate and try to find ways to cooperate. And sometimes it's exceedingly hard because they operate in very bad faith. And at other times they operate in good faith. There's just not a meeting of the minds, and that's okay too. But what I don't have time for is childishness and ego. I don't, because it doesn't produce any value. It doesn't create a strategy, and it collapses the entire network into a collection of personalities fighting. And it's reminiscent more of a Jerry Springer episode than it is actually a product. We have no place and purpose for these types of things. So, as a network, this is a great teachable moment for us. And we have to make some decisions about what we want to do and where we want to go. And you, as a casual listener, based on your delegation decisions, you should make some choices about what you expect for your DREPs, the level of seriousness they take in the role, and whether they put ego in the role or not. So anyway, I'll see everybody at Rare Evo. It's about 2 weeks. There's going to be a ton of great conversations, a lot of amazing things happening. Cardano's growing by leaps and bounds. We're finally back in the game, and I love the velocity. I love the community, and there's a ton of wonderful builders who are hungry, and they finally have the tools, the capability. We just need to get them the funding, and we need to give them the mandate. You know what? Get out of their way and let them get it done. It's been a lot of fun, and it's been very challenging this year. It's been a big year in transition, and it's been very hard from a certain dimension, um, watching things go in strange places and have to have strange conversations. On the other hand, it's fun to watch the ecosystem grow up, and it's fun to watch it become its own thing. And there's a few last ceremonial things I'm going to do this year to help get the network where it needs to go. But the reality is, Voltaire is, mostly speaking, a complete and unabridged success. We are now the most decentralized cryptocurrency on the planet, and we have the most vibrant and diverse government on the planet. It's up to all of you to keep it that way, and it's up to all of you to demand that it's both effective and efficient. Thanks for listening.